Okay, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the June 9th, 2026 Audit Facilities and Operations Committee meeting. Thank you for bearing with us regarding the late start. As we initiated at the last meeting, we're going to begin with the Pledge of Allegiance, and we will follow with public comment. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you, everyone. First item is public comment. No comment. Okay. We'll move on to the first item of business. I asked for this to be put on the agenda. It's a RFP regarding the district architect. I felt that it would be in the district's best interest to move forward with an RFP. I wonder if there is a like-minded thought process or thought amongst the fellow committee members or any other thoughts regarding the matter?
I also see the value in this, yes.
I also agree with the value of this, especially if we're going to be thinking about putting some major projects. And I think it's good to note that in RFP, we can still go with the same architect, but I do not think it can hurt us at all to ask questions now before we are signed in to go along for the ride. Thank you, sir.
Could not have said it better myself.
So would it make sense for us to meet with the current architect, considering we did an RFP in 25, a year ago?
So we've met with them earlier in the year, so I would be more comfortable with having an RFP and going through the interview process, and if they emerge as the top candidate, that's great.
So what would contest them emerging, or anyone emerging as a top candidate? I just want to be clear on that. That they're going to come in as the lowest bid? I mean, what would an RFP do? Because right now, one of the things I could tell you about KG&D is, one, we did an RFP a year ago. They've serviced schools like Trinity Point, Brewster, Scarsdale, Croton, and so forth. Where I found them to be very strong is cost management, their dealings with NYSED, I found them, and also change orders. Do you know what that is? That means if you're building something out and something changes because there's too much rocks in the ground or something, they were very accommodating there. And I think, they are a good company. Now, that being said, I'm not against RFP ever, but I do think that if we have issues with them, then we should spell those out, what those are.
So I think at our meeting back, what would that be, in March or February? We spelled out a lot of the issues with them, and I think that it was really came to the point that we were talking in circles regarding the concerns of this committee and the board as a whole, where our concerns were not addressed to our satisfaction. And the fact that we spent a lot of time with that, we weren't able to come to a conclusion on our differences. That's why I believe that an RFP would be in the best interest.
So, I'll put my 2 cents in. So, the superintendent has copies of their proposal from that time, including that fee sheet, which was taken apart and never accommodated to them. I don't feel they were treated properly. I don't feel we gave them the proper chance to show us what they could do. This committee, in part, was stuck on the subject of board meetings or $5,000, rather than going ahead with letting them do the pre-planning that is required for any bond. So, in my opinion, they were never given the opportunity to do the work that is necessary to have a bond. You can't have a pre-bond for free. There's landscaping architects and structural engineers involved. There's lots of people involved, and we did an RFP in April. There were 6 or 7 firms. We chose this firm, and we have not given them 5 cents. We haven't done any work in the past year with this firm. Further, if we're talking about having a bond in the fall, we will not be able to have a bond in the fall if we do an RFP and choose a new firm.
So
also, look,
yeah.
Can I just finish? I do not believe that they will propose again. I think they will be pretty frustrated that they were not given a chance to do anything after a year a year after being selected and being given no work, to go out and do another RFP. We're going to get the same firms that proposed again, and I don't know what you will gain, because in my opinion, what we should do is meet with them to hash out what the differences were, and then decide whether we need an RFP or not. But not just start off by saying we need an RFP without even exploring what our issues were with them, knowing that they're one of the finest firms that there is in the
Sure.
state.
So, Mr. Silver, I'm going to push back on that narrative. I do believe that we've given them ample opportunity to be able to come to a resolution regarding the differences that we saw regarding whether or not there's hurt feelings. I'm not really concerned about hurt feelings as a reason to not do an RFP.
Nor did I
These
use
are-
those words.
No, but you said that they would be frustrated and may not apply. I mean, that's their decision. They have every right to apply or not to apply. I can't control that, neither can the other members of this committee or this board. Some of the issues that I believe that this committee was extremely frustrated with is if there are going to be numbers proposed regarding a potential capital project, which in this case was the proposal for the transportation facility paving project earlier this year, and there's numbers provided to the committee, and they're asked how they arrived at those numbers and can give no explanation other than we have to expend a $50,000 for a fee in order to have those numbers further explained and broken down to us. That was extremely frustrating when they come back a meeting later and the prices increased by $300,000 or $400,000 with no real explanation, certainly no explanation that was able to satisfy this committee. That's extremely frustrating, and I think that causes an issue regarding our confidence in being able to be provided numbers by them with any capital project, such as any one that would be discussed moving forward or the one that was discussed earlier this year. I think that's why that came apart earlier this year. Like I said, that there was ample time and discussion spent with that firm, and we really just ended up talking in circles. They were firm in their stance, which is, again, their right and fine. I think another item that you mentioned was regarding a point that Trustee Wise had taken issue with regarding one of the numbers in their fee schedule, where they wanted to charge thousands of dollars to present to the full Board of Education regarding any capital project, which I agree with Trustee Wise is quite interesting when you have a firm that you're retaining as the district architect firm, and you're hoping to have a long-standing partnership with this firm, and in that case, moving forward with the project. Obviously, that project provides them work, and when they want to send an invoice of thousands of dollars to present to the Board of Education in a public setting, a presentation that would be of mutual benefit to the board and to them as a firm. Again, I just find that extremely interesting, and I think Trustee Wise was right on the money with that. So those are my concerns with the firm this year, and that is why I would support a RFP, and why I don't really see the value in continuing conversations regarding the issues that we had with the firm, because, like I said, those were addressed in real time with the firm in conversations, and there didn't seem to be any resolution.
Yeah, I would just add to that. First, there was a discussion, there was a statement made that we need to have this resolved quickly if we're going to make put a bond issue before the voters in the fall. I would stress that while I won't be here to vote on it, I strongly oppose any bond being put up for a vote out of the cycle of the normal election. As we've seen last month, we struggled to get voter turnout even on a well-advertised election day that is known a year in advance. Scheduling for a vote on borrowing money on behalf of the taxpayer out of that cycle has a history of very low voter turnout, and I don't think adequately expresses the will of the people.
So I'd like to push back on that.
Well, let me finish, because the other thing I'd like to say, echoing and amplifying what Trustee Curcio said, in our dealings with this firm, we saw 3 different versions of the same proposal. And there's a thing that happens that's sort of I don't want to say it's a game, because that's making too light of it. But look, I used to work in broadcast television. And we had an anchor who was sent out to Colorado to cover something, arrived, realized he didn't have the code he needed, bought a $200 ski jacket. And when he turned in his expense report, it was, receipts were needed for an approval for anything over $50. There was $50 this, $50 that, $50 that, $200 ski jacket. And it was rejected. And he resubmitted it with 4 more $50 items, no receipt needed, no approval needed, and scrawled across the bottom, find the jacket now, sucker. I feel like that's what it felt like. We told them we objected to them charging so much for this, and so they reduced the price of that and added a new line item for something else, making up the difference. So that even though the specific items we pushed back on the price of reduced in price, the total proposal came back $3,000 more expensive.
Can I speak
And I
now?
didn't like that.
Can I speak now?
I just want to ask Trustee Magliano if he would like to add anything to what was already said before we get too far away from.
Yeah, I'm gonna say it in plain English. Any bond that we put forward for any large amount of money in our community is gonna be a tough pass. Last year, I agree with 100%, and we couldn't confidently bring up a bond for a parking lot. I think is in our best interest prior to introducing a much larger bond. Now is the time to ask these questions. Once we sign on the line, there's no more questions left to be asked. And our only purpose to be here is to ask these questions.
Your proposal having to do with the timing of a bond is exactly the opposite of what I believe. When you have a bond at the same time as a regular election, the statistics show that more often than not you will lose the bond, possibly lose your budget, and people who are on the board could lose their seats. Further, if we have a bond next spring, if we have a bond this fall, we would have shovels in the ground in the summer of '27. Next summer. If we have a bond in the spring, we won't have shovels in the ground until the summer of '28. That means 2 years from now, we still have to have the same fields, the same track, which has already passed its useful life, and the same dismal sports facilities, as well as other things that we're in need of. And so I think, regardless of what you do, that it's wrong to have the vote at the same time as the election. You're likely to lose everything in that vote.
So I think we're talking at cross purposes in the sense that we're seeing a different purpose in bond. You just said to us, the reason to hold the bond election out of cycle is it's more likely to pass. But the purpose of a bond election is not to pass the bond, it is to get the will of the public. And holding it out of cycle in an election which history has shown again and again results in no turnout, results in people not being aware of the vote, is not a valid way to get the will of the voters on that bond.
I certainly disagree with that. Having done this for 40 years or more, I disagree with that.
I just want to touch on something too, because this was brought to us and we were planning it, and it seemed like we were on track for planning it, and we're planning as we should. But even the pressure that the last project was brought forth, 10% to expedite all this stuff and this and that, if we're planning this correctly, even when you're talking millions of dollars, 10% is nothing to laugh at. Why are we, to plan things properly, why are we being charged these numbers? Or are we being charged these numbers because we're trying to rush it through?
Well, I don't believe we were trying to rush it.
Then why was it expedited?
Well, I don't know what you mean by expedited. We were talking about putting it up for a May vote. We talked about it many months before that. We did the architectural thing 15 months ago. We chose an architect and did nothing during that time. And in order to do a proper bond vote, they have to bring in other firms that are involved in what they do, engineering firms, other services, estimating firms have to come in. There are, even if they wanted to have no cost for themselves, the firms that they would have to bring in would cost enough that they have to have some pre-bond work. And so you'll go for an RFP. I have all the things in my office from the last RFP. We could just trot them out again, but you'll still have the same thing for a pre-bond referendum, and you'll be waiting another year before you do this. So we're looking at 2 years with the poor facilities we have before we could start.
I think that we have a fiduciary responsibility to get this right. I've been on the board long enough where I've seen both failed and successful bonds, and this firm was unusual with the lack of information that they provided behind those numbers. I mean, I've seen bonds in 2017, 2018, those both failed. One in early 2019 that ultimately passed before it was repealed. But even in those cases, the numbers behind that, there was a lot more detail behind those numbers, where even if you disagreed with it, like I did at the time, I could at least understand where those numbers were coming from. That unfortunately was not the case earlier this year. I've spoken to two former board members, longtime board members that were on the board over the past 25 years. They both believe that in years past, when bonds came before the board, there was much greater detail provided with how those numbers came to arrive. So I do really think that earlier this year was an outlier. I also will speak to Trustee Wise's point very quick. I know that there is a difference of opinion on this, but I do think, in agreement with Trustee Wise, but difference of opinion with Mr. Silver regarding the timing of bond votes. I do think it is important that bond votes are held at the regularly scheduled May election. That is why this board and the district lost an immense amount of trust with the voters in the past decade, going back to 2017, when boards of yesteryear tried to ram through bond votes against the will of the voters. Their strategy was that they believed that senior citizens, who they believed would be more likely to not support the bond, that more of the senior citizen community would not be present to vote during the winter months, and that's why they put those up at that time. And I just think that's wrong. I think that's the wrong approach. I think that we should be looking for the maximum amount of voter input and striving for the largest turnout possible. And like Trustee Wise said, it's not about passing the bond, it's about getting the will of the voters, and that's how we get it at the polls. I mean, a May vote has a 10% voter turnout anyway. Taking it off May, it's just an abysmal turnout. I would oppose any off-cycle bond vote to begin with, but I think that's a larger board discussion. I think we're here just for the purpose of having a recommendation on moving forward with an RFP.
Well, whoever we award the RFP to, I'm just gonna make a suggestion. This group needs to meet with them right from the get-go, so that we can talk about expectations. Because where I think the compromise would lie is that also, I think if you spoke to one of the principals at KGD, and we would do that, I think we could hash this out with them, but that's not on the table from what I'm hearing. So, when we have an RFP, and that's what this group wants, then we need to get them in here as soon as we award someone on district architect to explain to them what we want, so we don't wind up back here again.
This is nothing personal, and this is nothing
No, I'm
against
not
them.
taking it
We
personal.
were presented by them, and we knew exactly what they wanted to present, and we tried to explain ourselves. And yes, we were told $140,000 for landscaping, not how many trees, how many this, what was entailed. And it's hard to make a decision around that, because it could be 3 or it could be 300 trees. We don't know. How do we?
In fact, when we asked them for that information, they told us it would cost additional.
$60,000.
Yeah, it would cost an additional $1,300 to get the breakdown on top of this.
Because they would have to pay for somebody, a landscape architect. You weren't paying for a landscape architect in the pre-book.
But as we've seen,
I'm finished.
Yeah, as
We'll
we've
do what
seen
you want.
beginning the project, we've already seen a massive increase in the price as we discovered drainage issues. Part of making a proposal, and I've worked consulting in the IT industry for many years prior to going back full-time, is you do outlay something to put together the pitch of what you think it's going to cost. It does cost money to cost things, but it costs a lot more money to give an inaccurate cost and have to go back and say this will cost 50% more, which is what well, not 50%, but we've seen a substantial cost increase already, and we don't even have approval of the proposal.
And I do think the principal's partners at the firm were involved in communications earlier in the year, so it's not like it's not like those discussions were not had. It just seems that unfortunately we're not able to come to a resolution on those matters, and that's why I felt it was important to have this on the agenda and make
Okay,
that.
but we're willing to meet if we find.
Absolutely.
Right, okay,
Mhm.
thank you. I don't want a reoccurrence of this.
Nor do we.
Thank you.
Okay, so that will be the committee's unanimous recommendation to move forward with a district RFP for the position, or for the district architect firm. Thank you very much.
That doesn't need any more.
I'm good. See you later.
Go ahead and do that, right?
Yeah, it wouldn't have required.
That's my understanding.
That is,
Mhm.
very well.
Okay. Thank you very much. The next items, Mr. Silver, I'll turn it over to you. All short mentioned items, beginning with the UPK contracts and enrollment.
So we know that we have $10,000 for each child, this unlimited amount. We have about 163 kids so far. If you look at the enrollment thing, you can see that there is only 1 or 2 spaces left in Carmel. And we find that people are not happy about having their kids go to Mahopac. They would prefer to have their kids go to Carmel. Although there are 11 spaces open with Putnam County, a lot of people do not want their children in the UPK program that's run by Putnam County. They want it run by others. So superintendent and I are meeting with one of our providers, Kids Cottage, who operates a UPK program in Mahopac and in Brewster. And we are meeting with them to talk about the idea of having them operate a UPK program on one of our properties. We don't know if that would be this year or next year. We don't know how many more kids are going to register. We have a few kids who have not chosen where they're going to be because they're not happy where they are. St. James is, of course, the preferred one. They have 37 kids. They can't have any more in 2 classes. And so on subject of St. James, I met this afternoon with the superintendent of the Archdiocese and the pastor from St. James and our new food service person. And we went through what we're going to be doing to provide food for all 150 kids at St. James. They're going to become what's called a recipient agency. We will have the benefit of reimbursement from the state and feds for 2 meals a day for all their kids. Their kitchen is not in bad shape. We need to do a few things there. We have a milk company that's going to donate a cooler. They have freezers there. And right now, I've described this situation where our kids come into the UPK program and they go right by the food thing and into their classroom. And the Brewster kids come in and get breakfast on our territory. And so that's what set me off in this to begin with, that our kids are getting nothing. So now Brewster is done. The state's saying they can't do it anymore. Brewster refused to feed all the children. They only wanted to feed the Brewster children, and the state says you can't do that. So we are taking over the food program at St. James, and all 150 kids will be fed. Of those kids, 90 are our kids, who are right now having to pay $5 a day, or they don't get any food at all. So it's a win for everybody. And Ann, our new kitchen person, was there today, and it was just a perfect visit. We met with their facilities people to see what needs to be done, moving things around a little bit. And I'll come back to you with an update on that when we get further down the road.
So on that, how many slots will we have across all buildings for UPK next year?
How many slots?
Yeah, so how many?
You just add up.
I know I can do the math if you have it off the top of your head.
So it's like 180 or something like that.
So of 180 students going to UPK, we'll be providing free lunch for 37 of them. But
We will be providing food at St. James.
Right.
None of the others are eligible for a school lunch program because they are not schools.
No, I understand that.
So only a school can provide that. And we will be, 37 of our kids are pre-K, and the rest of up to 90 kids are K through 6 that are our kids also. All those kids will be fed. So the daycare centers are not eligible. However, our contract with them this year will read that they have to provide food. And we're talking about giving, I think I've said this before, we're talking about giving them $1,000 a child for the year, which is essentially $5 a day, 180 days. and we can give them up to $10,000. We have been told that we are allowed to keep a portion of that $10,000 to cover some of our own in-house administrative costs, like my office, the registration of all the kids. We've talked about perhaps holding $500 back. If we did that, we would have $80,000 to cover some of our costs and additional revenue. Probably we won't do that with St. James to that same 500 because as a school, we have additional responsibilities to them. We provide a nurse to them that's under the law. And so we probably will give them 200 out of the 500 extra. I'm not sure how that's going to go. But for the most part, we're hoping to keep back $500 for each and give a maximum of $9,500 to any of the other locations. Also, our state aid changes from moment to moment. There's what's called Beds Day. You know what Beds Day is? That's when our official enrollment is, October 1st, I think. And we also have a second Beds Day for UPK in March. And that second Beds Day is what we get our state aid, or it's modified at that point for our state aid. So we're looking forward to a whole different conclusion to the 26-27 year than we have for the 25-26 year, where we lost about $230,000 that we didn't know was going to happen. So we feel we're in really good shape, and my office has taken over the entire UPK at the moment. When a new PPS person comes in, we'll see where that goes. There is some impetus from the state to evaluate 4-year-olds on the county level, and there's money being provided for some of that evaluation, but I believe it's only going to be at St. James. Only a school has that authority, whereas the daycare centers do not. So it's all very bright for our future with UPK. Almost every kid gets exactly what they want, but every kid gets in. So we don't have to have a lottery, and we should never have to have a lottery.
And if we end up bringing or expanding one of these services into our buildings next year, like you discussed, would that also be eligible for state aid?
Yes, it's eligible for the same $10,000, but there would also be the ability to use some of our title money for special programs that can only be used for UPK in-house. We're using it for other things, but you're allowed to use it for UPK, but only on our site. Could be used for training, things like that. Pre-K teacher, UPK teachers. So Superintendent and I meeting with Kids Cottage, and we'll see where that goes. I don't know exactly what happened with Erin in the past with this. I was not included in any of the meetings on the UPK, so I just don't know why we didn't have it or why we couldn't have our teachers. But I think there's a difference in what the teachers are in the UPK from what they are in K-6. A different certification for UPK. So just so you know, a school is allowed to have 18 kids, 18 UPK kids, with one teacher and one teaching assistant. A school can go to 20 kids if you add another teaching assistant. So right now, St. James is only having 18, one class, 17, something like that, just under 18 in the other class. All the others are daycare. They're only allowed to have 16 kids in a class with a teacher and a second person. Daycares do not qualify the same as an actual school.
So when we see Learning Garden with 27 and Kids Cottage with 28, that means they have 2 classrooms?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Understood.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Trustee Magliano?
Well, I'm glad to hear that we are making a lot of progress and we've worked out a lot of the kinks from the previous years and we're growing. I've said this before, I'm going to say it again. I am a huge advocate of trying to get more in-house because as you see, there's a lot more opportunity both for us and the students. And as opposed to us getting this money and just handing it out to other people to take care of our kids, I think as much as we can, we should try and grow in-house.
Yep. Dr. Gorman and I have seen where we used to be, where we had 3 UPK classes in a high school, and the high school kids were involved every day with these little kids, and they got credit, high school credit, for being involved with that. We don't know if we would have space at any point in the high school or the middle school or maybe one of the elementary schools. But if anything we can do on our own is better than that.
I love that idea.
Especially like if we could take it away from Mayopac and have it be on our site, that would be preferable.
And just adding to that, we have a number of students from our high school who go down to PNW the NW BOCES and actually teach a UPK course there as part of the childhood learning
You would be able to
vocational
do that.
program. And being able to bring that back in-house gives a better experience for them. They don't take a bus down to the BOCES campus and back up every
and we
day.
don't bus any of our UPK kids. Brewster buses their UPK kids
Oh, I'm
to
talking
St.
about the
James,
teachers,
but
the
we're not
students
doing that.
from the high school are
Our
participating. Yeah,
Yeah, we'd be able to build that into our school.
Thank you.
yes, that sounds great.
The exemption, you want to touch on that?
Sure. Do you have anything separately to add, or?
No, I'm done with that.
Sure. So the police line of duty surviving spouse exemption will be on the full board agenda later this evening. I did pass out to my fellow committee members and the superintendent earlier this evening or earlier today. The school board was emailed a letter from the New York City Police Benevolent Association urging the board to pass this exemption. Also included in the packets, you'll see letters from the Detectives Endowment Association, the Sergeants Benevolent Association, of which I'm a member, the Lieutenants Benevolent Association, and the Captains Endowment Association, also encouraging the school board to pass this resolution tonight. So I think
We have a hearing, we should
yes,
mention, we
there's
have a hearing tonight.
earlier at 7:30, and then the board will have an opportunity to act on the resolution. Of course, this committee recommended that the board adopt the full 50%. I am hopeful that my colleagues of the full board will heed this committee's recommendation and adopt the full 50%. I think it is more than warranted, and I think we can discuss these letters in greater detail later
We
this
should-
evening.
I'm sorry, we should also stress that this is surviving spouse. We're not talking about widow or widower,
Correct.
it
yes,
is surviving
would-
spouse, so.
Yep, it would apply to the surviving spouse of a police officer killed in the line of duty.
That's
While serving the schools.
Very good.
Oh.
Okay.
Yeah, and I would note that our ability to grant exemptions of this sort comes
Yes.
from New York State law.
Mhm.
I would personally favor extending this to all first responders, the surviving spouses of all first responders who died in the course of duty, but we don't have that option without the state looking into first.
Right, so this
Trustee
is
Wise
just for
is
police.
exactly right. This was legislation signed into law by Governor Hochul this past December of 2025. So again, it would apply to any police officer in New York State there that was killed in the line of duty. It would benefit their surviving spouse if they are a resident of the Carmel Central School District.
Right, and so with your help, we contacted 2 school districts on Long Island, Sayville, and I can't remember what the other one was. And they provided us with their drafts of what they used. Those are the only 2 we knew of
Mhm.
that had passed that, and our attorney passed on it, and so we're ready to go once we have the public hearing.
Excellent.
So-
Well, I thank this committee for working together collaboratively to recommend the full 50%. Thank you, Mr. Silver, for your work with this. I think it's a great thing to be moving forward, to honor the sacrifice of those that gave all, and we'll continue this conversation as a full board later tonight. So thank you.
I need to go back to the UPK for just a minute.
Sure.
So we are now, I'm drafting the contracts. I wanted to wait until I presented that to you tonight. I'm drafting the contracts. We're going to have the various places sign it,
Mhm.
and then it'll come to the board for approval of the contracts.
Excellent, thank you. You already touched on the St. James and school lunch,
Yeah,
that was
that's-
part of the earlier
We're all
discussion.
set.
And the new school bus driver signing bonus, which is also on our agenda later this evening at our last committee meeting. The committee recommended to move forward with that. So this replaces a previous incentive as that phases out.
Right.
And this is a $1,000 signing bonus to attempt to incentivize the hiring of new school bus drivers. They would receive the incentive after the completion of 5 months of service to the Carmel Central School District. So that would hopefully deter somebody from just taking the money and hopping over the border to Brewster or Wappingers or what have you. But we are always looking for new and creative ways to attempt to hire new school bus drivers. I know it's not just the hiring and retention issue of bus drivers. It's not just an issue in Carmel, but regionally, statewide, and frankly nationwide. I know our neighboring districts are facing similar issues, so anything that can help to stem that problem.
So we've done a couple of things already. We are now paying for their 34 hours of training. We're paying them for that.
Mhm.
We're paying for their background check or their fingerprinting. And so that's new for us. And our new salary schedule starts them at around 27 something.
Mhm.
And we're now pretty close in terms of our salaries to what they are in places. Everybody's comparing it, I guess, to Arlington for some reason. But we're pretty close. Our salaries are now competitive, and we're very pleased with that. We're hoping that.
The thing is when we compare, people compare us to other schools, we gotta do the best we can for ourselves
Mhm.
and for the people we employ.
The bottom line is, we are much closer than we have ever been historically
Mhm.
to at least being on par for surrounding areas.
Yes. And I
Which gives us a chance.
I think on par is a wonderful goal for all of our bargaining units.
And I think it's great timing to move this forward tonight, as Mr. Silver referenced, at the same time that a collective bargaining agreement that our bus drivers are part of that unit is up for a vote this evening. So those work hand in hand to support, in this case, our school bus drivers, who we are extremely grateful for the wonderful job that they do every day to make our district run and get our students to and from school safely every day, regardless of the weather conditions. So we are very thankful for their service to our district. Okay. Is there any other business that any committee member would like to bring up?
Nope.
Is there any comments from the public that you gentlemen would like to weigh in on of any items that we discussed this evening?
I would like to ask about the new bus drivers sign-on bonus. Is there anything that we can put forth for the retention of our senior bus drivers to be able to guide these younger bus drivers in their path to success?
So,
Well, we have some wonderful trainers
Okay.
and old, seasoned bus drivers that put a lot into training and mentoring these people.
Right.
So
Do we-
typically, drivers come from
Retention.
another place where they come from another place where they've already been a driver. It's unusual for somebody just to start off as a bus driver. Usually they move from place to place. Historically, that's what we see. But that's not a bad point.
Ken,
But we
you
do have
remember-
three trainers.
I don't remember, is there anything in the pay schedule that serves as a longevity?
Yeah, CSEA has longevity.
Right, but does
Yeah.
the bus driver schedule? There's different schedules there, I don't remember, that's why I'm asking,
Not specifically, like,
for bus drivers.
just CSEA in general,
Gotcha.
years.
Okay, so
Um,
yes,
But the MOA that's current for the school year, after 5 years, they get the additional 1,000.
okay.
So that's gonna continue for those people who are hired this year or were on years 2 through 4.
Okay,
They can continue to get that as they hit year 5.
so there are incentives built.
Yes.
But to Jacob's point, in looking at our other bargaining units within the teachers or the teachers' aides, if someone gives up their free schedule to be a mentor to an incoming teacher, they get a stipend to reward them for that. Is there anything we could structure like that?
We could think about it.
But we have driver trainers now. We have
That's
3
what we
people
have.
whose job is to train the drivers, to work with the drivers.
Okay, and does their pay scale reflect that?
Yes.
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 That's for sure.
So we do,
But we
even
don't-
though it's not on a time basis.
Right, and it's not a one-to-one mentor, that's the difference.
Understood.
Right.
Trustee Maglio?
All right, so the only thing, I just want to piggyback off of what Jacob said. What we're doing here is we're trying to incentivize new bus drivers to come into the district. I love that, that's great, we have a shortage. But after listening to the bus drivers in general, it sounds like they feel like the ones that are being loyal to the district, that may have been here, they put in their hours, they put in their training, there's really nothing built in for them to want to stay and not hop ship.
Except they're getting a substantial raise in this contract that's being proposed tonight.
Okay, well then, that works towards retention.
Yeah.
Right.
This is the closest to an equalizer as there's been for years.
Yes.
And I'm sure you're aware, it's just not our district. It's a nationwide and statewide shortage of bus drivers. But this, like I said, when you look at the numbers, you could figure out why people would move. Now, like we were saying before, this new contract really puts us on par, makes us competitive, and gives them incentive to not only start here, but to stay here.
What about the difference between bus drivers that are currently working in the district versus ones that we bring on for substitute purposes and things of that nature? How does that work? Because after kind of attempting to look over how the pay structures and the salaries worked, it seemed like it was more beneficial for me to be a hired gun and come in and, substitute for the district than to be an actual bus driver. How do we flip that where it's better to be a bus driver and not a substitute?
It's interesting because in a situation where there are many roles unfilled, that remains true.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, if you're a substitute and you can count on getting work every day, you'll get paid much more as a substitute.
Absolutely.
You don't get, however, healthcare benefits and so forth, so the cost of the district doesn't necessarily reflect that difference. The goal is that as we fill these positions,
Mhm.
substitutes are needed rarely enough that you sign up, you get paid more for the odd day you work, but that's because most days you don't get the call.
Is this new contractual situation going to bring that number closer? Because it was a pretty stark difference.
That's a
to me.
good question.
Or are we not allowed to discuss
It's
that?
No,
It's a substantial
It's on the
increase
record,
for our regular drivers.
Okay.
Yeah, it's on the public agenda, but yes, I do think, to your point and to Ken's point, I don't think the substantial increase for the regular drivers is matched by a corresponding increase for the substitute.
Okay, so it is gonna bridge the gap.
Yep.
Okay, that's good to know.
And we'll be, that subject will be on the reorg meeting.
Yep. The salaries.
The substitute rates in general will be a part of that, and we'll probably be bringing that to you at our next meeting in preparation for the reorg meeting.
Very
The
good.
substitute rates for all everything.
Excellent. Okay. Any other comments or questions, gentlemen?
Great.
All good. Okay, well, with that, we will conclude and adjourn our June 9th committee meeting. The next committee meeting is June 23rd here at Cornwall High School. As always, we are very appreciative of our, obviously, our business office, our facilities crew, our drivers, operations, all the folks that enable our district to operate smoothly for the benefit of all of our students, and so please take that back to all your departments, how much we appreciate all of our valued employees. So with that, thank you, and we'll see you in 2 weeks.
Okay.